I've been a national park ranger for nearly 2 decades, and let me tell you, protocols have changed a lot in that time. I'm sharing this to keep folks safe the next time you head into the great outdoors. Let me tell you about the last park I worked at. I can't get too specific about the location or my job, for obvious reasons. We had clusters of campsites we rotated yearly to keep any one area from getting worn out, giving nature a chance to recover. Winter had just passed, and with the big summer season a few months away, I was sent out to check the campsite's condition, deciding which ones needed a break and which could open up. Winters here are cold. Not many camped during that time, except for rugged masochists and Boy Scout troops led by folks who think they're rugged masochists. I didn't expect to find anything unusual. The first site was clear and ready. As I trekked to the next one, I spotted what looked like debris and junk down in a river valley. Looked like some jackasses had set up an unauthorized camp. Usually, that means garbage and smoldering fires. A pain to clean up. I approached, seeing the wreckage of what must have been one hell of a party. Shit scattered everywhere, skeletons of tents still pitched, and blood. I stopped dead. Time stopped with me. Pools of blood spread across the ground next to signs of something heavy being dragged into the brush. I pulled my radio off my belt, then paused. Instead, I drew my Glock 22, racked around. I'm a certified law enforcement officer, but I hadn't needed my gun in ages. I scanned for movement, then got on the radio to call for backup. While waiting, I listened. Silence. Silence in nature's bad. Prey goes quiet when predator's near. I hoped the birds were still because of me. Edging forward slowly, I looked for anyone or anything. A shredded plastic cooler. A tent annihilated with blood splattered on the walls and inside. People died here, I knew it. You can't lose that much blood and walk away. But no bodies. Shreds of clothes, some viscera, a drawing of all the flies buzzing around, but no people. I've seen bears rummage through camps, tearing apart anything edible. We got wild dogs here that cut trails through the deep brush, more dangerous than bears. But this wasn't either. The devastation was too much. Some scourge of God ripped through here, shredding everything. Backup arrived, and I was sent a report to headquarters. They even brought medics, pointless, since there was no one to save. One of the new recruits vomited at the scene. Honestly, I was glad to get the hell out. Back at headquarters, it was chaos. Only 4 of us work here, but phones were ringing, printers humming, the air electric. The manager saw me and signaled me to his office. He looked pale, ashen, with bloodshot eyes. I sat by his desk, and he locked the door, something I'd never seen him do. He asked what I saw. I told him, uninterrupted. He looked even paler after, his hands trembling. A long pause followed. I expected questions, but he asked none. I left, hearing the door lock behind me. Minutes later, I heard him on a long, low phone call. I never saw him again. Word came down from above. We had a new manager, one who excelled at crisis. His first order? A controlled burn of the unauthorized camp and the sites closest to it. I didn't argue. I watched the smoke rise in the distance, praying that was the end of it. New orders came. Relocate the campsites closer to headquarters. Before that, we set up trail cameras at the new locations to ensure they weren't in nesting grounds. We also placed cameras along the hog trails through the brush for good measure. A couple of days later, we collected the footage. The new manager took it all, studying it in his office. Hours into reviewing, he lost it, screaming, yelling, calling up the chain, spitting curses. He spent the rest of the day and night in the office, phoning specialists and planners. Next morning, I showed up for a meeting. The manager looked like he hadn't slept. Massive changes were afoot. He laid out new plans. Bright lampposts circling the park border, floodlights around the ranger station and campsites, which needed to move even closer, with clear lines of sight from the lights. I argued this defeated the point of camping. If you're just walking through grass to set up where you can see the parking lot. He told me to shut up. That was just the start. The park now closed at sundown sharp. We were required to carry a long gun at all times. It's not uncommon for rangers to carry an AR-15 or Remington 870 shotgun in the deep woods. Wild, rabid animals are out there. But the real concern? Massive pot growers. Not your chill, hide a few plants types, but large-scale suppliers who value privacy and hate law enforcement or anti-government crazies who think we got no right over them. Both groups are well armed, don't like lawmen, and won't hesitate to take a shot at a ranger who stumbles into their fields. Even Elliot Ness, who took down Al Capone, got scared off busting Appalachian moonshiners because they sniped at him in the foothills. They shoot to kill. That's why we keep the big guns, not for routine patrols. I drew the short straw for the overnight shift. The manager said more protocol changes would come when I returned. Overnights used to be easy. Monitor radios, break up parties, check for poachers, ensure the forest didn't burn down. I clocked in when the gun cage. Things had changed. Our shotguns had new rifle barrels to handle solid slugs, the kind of firepower you'd use to stop a charging bear. God forbid. The AR-15s now had 30-round magazines instead of 15, and someone snuck in hollow point rounds. Makes no damn sense. In the woods, you need full metal jacket ammo, so rounds don't go wild hitting a twig. Hollow points are for tissue damage. This was ridiculous. Overkill. We're not a war zone. Next to the radio were new instructions. We couldn't respond directly to emergency calls. We could reply, assess the issue, then report to a new phone number I didn't recognize. Time passed slowly that night. I wasn't allowed to leave the building until sunup. A few uneventful nights passed. The new floodlights and lampposts were frying my eyes. It was so bright a blind man could see. A week later, some kids rolled in, grabbed their backpacks, and hiked up the ridge. I knew what they were up to. No one had booked a campsite that night. Cheap young ones planning a raging party. No doubt. I waited for sundown, confirming they weren't on a day hike, then called my manager to report. He told me to call the new number. A curt voice answered, asked my park, paused, then asked the issue. I reported the kids on an unauthorized site, asked if I should break it up. I could see their campfire on the ridge. No, do not leave the building. Do not attempt communication. Report any developments. Right after daybreak, the manager arrived early. Have you seen them? Did they leave? The car was still there. Let them rest. Probably hungover, I said. He cursed nonstop, went inside to make a call. I was outside, looking up the ridge, when he exited the station. One AR-15 in hand, another strapped to his back, Glock on his hip. He grabbed a jerrycan of gasoline from his car and marched toward the ridge. I tried asking what the hell he was doing. No reply. I considered following, but thought better of it. I called the number. Same curt voice, same direct questions. I reported the manager heading to the campsite, armed to the teeth, carrying gasoline. What do? Stay there. Do not interfere. Backup is inbound. Report any developments. About then, I saw smoke rising from the ridge. 2 vans screamed into the lot. A dozen heavily armed. Armored men exited with military precision. I went out. Who are you? What's going on? The commander, exiting last, asked, which direction did he go? I pointed at the rising smoke. The men fanned out, jogging up the ridge, rifles cocking. I shouted after them. No response. The vans were nondescript, marked only DOI response team. Half an hour later, they returned, dragging the manager in zip ties. He screamed. I did what needed to be done. It's worse than they thought. We can't stop this. Burn it all. They threw him in the back, sedated him. The commander approached me, my neck bristling with fear. I need the office. All computers, hard drives, videotapes. I unlocked the doors. They ransacked the place. Reports from years past. Videotapes bagged up, held by the commander himself. He studied the gun cage. Cute. You're out of your league. he scoffed. They took everything. The commander told me, call the number, tell them it's contained. You need a new superior. Don't talk about this. They left. On cue, the fire brigade and more vans arrived. The fire was contained. News reports called rumors of missing campers unsubstantiated. The manager's switch was chalked up to bureaucracy. The press died down in a week. The new manager was good with them. With no campers and shorter hours, we rebuilt the station and set up new campsites, practically spitting distance from the station. Nothing dramatic happened for a few days. Then, on a whim, the manager had us set up cameras around the station and campsites. Usually, with so much human activity, you'd see raccoons or a rare hungry bear. We set them up. A couple of days later, we collected the footage. I played poker with a rookie while the manager watched hours of empty, illuminated parking lot footage. Then he hit the station footage. Screams came from the office. We barged in. He was stomping on the camera hard drives, gibbering. They told me it was clean, safe, no recent activity. It's here. He barked at us to leave. Later, he made a call. The rookie eavesdropped, reporting the manager demanded a transfer, saying they lied, didn't do their jobs, and he wasn't equipped. Then the phone clicked, followed by sobbing. Hours later, the manager exited, shoulders slumped, defeated. We cut hours further. Weekends only, full staff and skeleton crew otherwise. Campers had to check into the closest sites or leave. We couldn't leave the station after dark. In emergencies, number 911, call the number and follow orders. We drew straws for overnights. Why we needed to stay overnight without doing anything was beyond me. I asked the manager. He said protocol required someone to report irregularities. On my overnight, I kept my phone close, the number dialed. Ready? It was a bad night. I paced with my shotgun, glancing into the floodlights, trying to see beyond. Crickets chirped, relaxing me. Praise quiet when predators are around. It was a long night. Next night, the manager drew the short straw. He seemed resigned. We all had to take a turn. He brought the brightest tactical flashlight I'd ever seen, saying he bought it because he's afraid of the dark. He wasn't. He was afraid of what's in the dark. At 3 a.m., he called. Get here now. Bring guns. You've got an arsenal. I screwed up. They're attracted to the light. I called the number. They said backup won't be here till morning. Oh shit. Gunshots rang out. A pause, more shots. Screaming, scuffling. Then the line went dead. I called the number. A new terse voice. I just spoke with him. What can you report? Something bad happened. I heard gunshots. We'll have backup there ASAP. Did he say anything else? He said they're attracted to light. Interesting. Thank you. The park is now closed. You'll be reassigned. Goodbye. Officially, the park closed for a control burn. Let old trees die. Make room for new ones. Nothing in the report about the manager on duty. The public thought bureaucracies needed shaking up. No one asked more. I got transferred to a new park halfway across the country. Nice scenery, beautiful, but odd rules. Don't go far after dark. Don't carry a flashlight. I'm concerned about why we can't use flashlights at night when you need one. They won't tell me. Please, everyone, be safe out there. My friends and I have been hiking and backpacking for years, hitting the trails at least once annually for a solid multi-day trip. We've revisited some spots multiple times, and aside from the occasional car trouble or someone forgetting proper gear, we've never had real issues. This particular trip was a tough one. 6 miles in, 6 miles out, with a 6,000-foot elevation change both ways, leading to a lake in northern New Mexico. We planned for October, bracing for bitter cold, possibly below freezing at night. There were just 3 of us, and we were ready. I was probably the least equipped of the trio, but I knew I'd be fine. The trekking took all day, but we reached the lake without a hitch. We set up camp, soaked in the sounds of nature, played some games, and shared a couple pints of whiskey by the fire. As night fell, we settled into our sleeping arrangements. Me in a small tent, my friend in a hammock right next to me, maybe 10 feet away near the fire pit, and our other friend about 100 feet off his own tent. I had trouble sleeping, feeling restless. Even though I was warm, I kept getting shivers and tossing in my sleeping bag. I chalked it up to the cold and didn't think much of it. The forest was quiet, save for the occasional buzz of insects or a bird fluttering from a tree. Eventually, I started to drift off. That's when I was jolted awake by my friend's voice, clear as day, calling my name. "Help! Help me!" Groggy and confused, I froze. He sounded desperate, repeating, "Kieran, help me!" Before I could respond, I heard it again. "Kieran, help! I have to pee." Then came a laugh, a giggle I'd known since we met years ago, unmistakably his. I muttered, "Piss off, man. I'm trying to sleep," thinking he was pulling a prank. Looking back, it was out of character for him to wake me just to mess around, but half asleep, I brushed it off. Something felt off, though I ignored it and told him to go do his business. He kept at it. "Help! I need you. Come out here." I grumbled about sleeping and told him to go pee already. My memory is fuzzy on the exact exchange, but after a bit, the voice stopped. I noticed he hadn't made any noise. No rustling to leave or climb back into his hammock. I figured he'd gone quietly and let it go. Then I realized I had to pee badly and wouldn't sleep until I did. I crawled out of my tent and walked over to his hammock, planning to jokingly wake him like he'd done to me. I called his name, mimicking his tone, but when he woke, he was instantly thrown off. I said I was just going to pee, like he'd told me 15 minutes earlier. He had no idea what I was talking about. I pressed him, asking if he'd been outside my tent. He swore he'd been asleep in his hammock the whole time, never getting up. Chills ran down my spine. Whatever was outside my tent, mimicking his voice in that high-pitched, mocking tone, saying, "Help! Help me! I have to pee! Come out here!" wasn't him. I played it off, saying it was nothing, and went to pee, keeping my eyes on my surroundings. Back in my tent, I warmed up and got drowsy, despite the terror. I'm familiar with the lore of northern New Mexico, and I know I wouldn't be the first to vanish without a trace if I'd followed that voice. Somehow, I shook it off and started drifting again. That's when it tried to get me. In that half-awake state, where you feel like you're falling and jolt awake, I wasn't falling. Something grabbed my tent and dragged it at what felt like 50 miles an hour across the forest floor. I felt every bump, tree stumps, rocks, tearing the tent, thrashing me around as I was pulled through dense trees in a straight line, which made no sense given the forest layout. I screamed, but barely any sound came out. It felt like I'd been dragged hundreds of feet. Then I opened my eyes. I was lying in my tent, undisturbed, unharmed. Everything looked the same, but that dragging felt so real, not like a dream. I called out to my friend, feeling bad for waking him but needing to confirm reality. He groggily responded, sounding genuine, unlike the voice earlier. I realized whatever had called me before was nothing like him. That high-pitched, whiny mimicry, saying, "Help, help me, I have to pee, come out here," still haunts me. The next morning, I asked him about it. He laughed, swearing he hadn't gotten up or said anything. Whatever it was targeted me specifically. My friends have gone back. But I skipped that trip. To whatever was out there, let's not meet again. One day, I matched with a guy on Tinder. Our conversation got a bit spicy, so I gave him my number to keep chatting. We texted that night, but it wasn't anything too intense. No photos, no nudes, no plans to meet up. The conversation fizzled out, and I forgot about him. Weeks passed, and I deleted our chat history. Then, late one night, I got a lewd photo from a number I didn't recognize. It was some guy I didn't know. I thought about firing off an insult, but decided to just delete it and move on. A few weeks later, another one showed up. Curious, I checked my deleted messages to make sure I didn't know the sender. Sure enough, it was a Tinder guy. It was creepy that he'd text me out of the blue with explicit images after a month of no contact. Gross. So, I blocked his number. A couple weeks later, I got a lewd video on my Apple Watch. It was the same guy. I was baffled. How was he messaging my watch if I blocked him? I blocked him again on the watch, thinking what a weirdo. A week or so after that, I left my apartment for a walk. As I stepped outside, I saw him. He was right there, walking toward me in front of my building. He was wearing the same outfit as in his Tinder profile, complete with the same tattoos and hat. I was certain it was him. I'd never told him where I lived. I freaked out, but tried to stay calm. I was dressed in baggy clothes and had recently changed my hair color, so I kept my head down, hoping he wouldn't recognize me. I walked right past him, too scared to look at his face or check if he noticed me. I didn't dare glance back to see where he went, just kept moving forward. My heart was racing, but nothing happened after that. I never saw him again. I've racked my brain trying to figure out how he found me. I never share my address, so my best guess is he used my phone number to track me down somehow. It's unsettling to think it was just some random guy I texted for one day on Tinder. Even with the creepy photos and videos, I initially thought he was just a typical perv. I never expected him to show up at my apartment. He didn't even try to text or meet up normally. Just sent those images over 2 months and then appeared. It's so bizarre and random. I'm pretty sure his intentions were something twisted, and it still gives me the creeps to think about what he wanted. I'm just glad he left me alone after that. Now, I never give out my real phone number to dates anymore. To the Tinder stalker, let's never meet again. This happened 11 years ago when I was 19, working at a gas station that was part of a regional chain. 2 guys, both Marines, were regulars at the store. One of them, of Asian descent, would always try to flirt with me. I'd play oblivious, keep it professional, and move on with my day. After they'd been coming in for a while, he started asking me out. This guy was 35. I knew because I carded him for cigarettes. Our store was strict about checking IDs for everyone. I said no and kept it polite, asking if he needed anything else. He didn't stop. Every time he came in, he'd ask me out again, and each rejection seemed to frustrate him more. His body language would shift, tense shoulders, a scowl, and his whole vibe would change when I turned him down. I told my manager he was making me uncomfortable, but she brushed it off, saying to treat all customers with respect. I felt dismissed, but kept doing my job. A couple of months later, my friend was browsing Craigslist for a used car and decided to check the misconnections section for a laugh. That section doesn't exist anymore, but back then, it was like a dating board where people posted about someone they saw, but didn't get to talk to. Lo and behold, there was a post with my name, the name of the store and the town. I don't have a super common first name, and I was the only one with that name at the store. We had to wear name tags, so it was definitely about me. The post described seeing me at work, saying I was pretty and wanted to take me on a date. I was creeped out. I showed my dad, and he was livid. He emailed the guy through the listing, telling him to piss off. I printed the post and showed my boss, hoping she'd take it seriously. Instead, she told me to just go on a date with him and then say I wasn't interested. I was furious. Her response was absurd and completely unhelpful. About a week later, the guy's friend came into the store alone. These were big guys, Marines, not small by any means. I rang him up and, out of nowhere, he snapped at me. "What's your damn problem? You don't want to go out with my friend because he's Asian? He really likes you, you racist." I was stunned but stood my ground. I told him I wasn't going out with his friend because he was 35 and harassing me. That was the last time I saw either of them. A week after that, I got fired. No reason given, just let go. I found another job waiting tables and moved on. Years later, I learned my manager was fired for wrongful termination. Apparently, She had a habit of canning people she didn't like for personal reasons. I hope she never has a daughter. To the Marine who harassed me, let's never meet again. A few months ago, I was watching a YouTube video where a creator shared, "Let's not meet" stories about creepy encounters with landlords or hostile owners, and it jogged my memory about an unsettling experience I had. It's not as terrifying as some stories out there, but the video made me paranoid, and it's why I decided to leave that Airbnb. I'd rather not end up as a victim in a true crime story. This happened in January or February of 2024. If I recall correctly, I was visiting family in southern France, and for personal reasons I won't get into, didn't want to stay at their place, even though they offered. I visit them often, usually on short notice, so I never book the same place twice. Sometimes I opt for a hotel, which is pricier but more private, as I'm not big on socializing with hosts. When I book Airbnbs, I always look for flats or studios, not rooms in someone's house, because I prefer to be on my own. That's a key criterion for me. I booked an Airbnb within walking distance of my family's place. It looked nice online, marketed as a house or ground floor flat with access to a yard and garden. It was one of the cheaper options, which suited me fine since I wasn't there for luxury or leisure, just convenience. There weren't many reviews, but the few it had were positive. When I arrived with my suitcase, I waited outside the house for the landlord to hand over the keys. He was late. I stood there for at least an hour, trying to stay patient. The neighborhood seemed nice and safe, though I had to walk through some sketchy areas to get there from my relative's place. Finally, the landlord showed up. He seemed like a decent guy and apologized profusely, saying he'd been in another town visiting his cousin or friends and lost track of time. First red flag. He casually mentioned they'd been drinking and he hadn't sobered up fully, so he sped down the highway on his motorbike to get back. He half-jokingly asked me not to mention that in my review. I got serious and told him he shouldn't drink and drive. He brushed it off, saying he didn't want to keep me waiting longer. I said I wouldn't mention it in the review. Spoiler, I did. But I didn't want to start off on the wrong foot. He was otherwise friendly, chatty, and seemed trustworthy. Then came the second red flag. He explained I'd be staying in a small flat attached to the larger house where he lived, but assured me I'd have my own space. Bathroom, kitchen, the works. I wasn't thrilled about this, as I thought it was a standalone place. Still, as a paranoid solo traveler, I figured it might be reassuring to have someone nearby in case something happened. God, was I wrong. He showed me around. The place was old but fine for my needs, as I wasn't after luxury. My part of the house was on a lower level, not quite a basement, but I had to walk down outdoor stairs to enter through the backyard. This was most noticeable in the bedroom, where the windows sat at ground level. The next yellow flag came when he pointed out a connecting door near the bedroom that linked my flat to his house. I'd half expected something like this, but thought he'd at least have to cross the yard, or use the front door to access my space. He said the door was locked and stayed closed, not as a warning to me, but more like, "It's there, but it's useless to you." We chatted longer than I wanted. I was tired, still annoyed about his tardiness, and not in the mood to socialize. He gave me his phone number, saying WhatsApp was easier than Airbnb's chat feature, and then left. I started settling in, unpacking my suitcase, and changing before heading to visit my family. That evening, I returned to the Airbnb and decided to shower. I think what happened next was before the shower, because I remember locking the bathroom door, which I never do when I'm alone, and feeling anxious. The biggest red flag hit while I was sitting on the bed. I heard a knock and someone saying my name. 2 seconds later, before I could respond or process where it was coming from, I heard keys turning a lock and a door opening. It was a connecting door next to the bedroom. The landlord walked in, saying he couldn't find his phone and thought he might have left it downstairs. I was stunned, especially since if he'd come 10 minutes later, I could have been naked or in a towel, thinking I was alone. I know it might sound like I'm overreacting, But I'm a young woman alone in a house with a man in his 40s or 50s who could enter my space whenever he wanted. I stayed polite and said I hadn't seen his phone. I'd have noticed, as there was nothing in the room but my open suitcase on the couch. He still walked around, talking fast and a lot, while I sat there, barely processing and unable to ask him to leave. He looked around, didn't find the phone, apologized, and asked if I'd had dinner or if everything was okay before leaving. At that point, I was seriously questioning whether to stay. I knew Airbnb's refund policy only covered cancellations 2 nights in advance, so I'd likely lose money for that night and the next. It was already around 11 p.m. I tried checking for hotel rooms, but it was too late and everything was booked. I decided to shower quickly, worried he'd hear the water and come back claiming he forgot something else. Nothing happened, though. I went back to the bedroom, got dressed fast just in case, and sat down to think. That's when I noticed the chairs in the room. There were 2, and one had ropes tied around the armrests. The chairs were in good shape, and the ropes weren't there to fix anything. They were just loosely tied. To this day, I have no idea why they were there. I considered sleeping there for the night and reassessing in the morning, hoping I'd feel less paranoid. I tried using a chair to block the bedroom door handle, like in the movies, but it didn't work. I tried both chairs, even stacking them and using the ropes, but the handle could still move enough to open the door. I figured if I left them in front of the door, I'd at least hear if someone tried to enter, but the door opened outward, so it wouldn't matter. I didn't know what I'd do even if I heard someone. I'm paranoid and anxious, especially living abroad alone. My motto is to never take risks with my safety, as I'm usually the only one who can protect myself. I don't avoid going out, but I don't get drunk around strangers, and I take cabs if I feel unsafe walking home late. The city I live in now is fairly safe, but bad encounters aren't uncommon for most women, so I'm always cautious. To an outsider, this might seem like a friendly landlord who's just overly social, and the ropes could be a random detail. But to my anxious self, it felt like the setup for a horror movie where you yell at the naive victim to get out before it's too late. So, I called my brother, who picked me up around midnight. I spent the rest of my trip at his place. To the Airbnb landlord, let's not meet again. A few weeks ago, I was driving to the middle of nowhere to visit a friend. My wife was asleep in the passenger seat, my teenage daughters were watching a movie in the back, and my toddler was playing with his toys next to them. It was around 1 a.m., and I was feeling uneasy. The drive seemed to drag on forever. The dirt roads, pitch black with no lights, gave me chills. All I could see were endless fields stretching out around us. The road was rough, full of potholes, and I was focused on dodging them as best I could. Out of nowhere, I spotted a piece of luggage sitting in the middle of the road, right in my lane. On the opposite side, a car was parked, completely dark, no interior or exterior lights. I didn't want to drive over the luggage, so my first instinct was to get out and move it. I was lucky to have my wife with me. She grabbed my hand and pointed to the right. There, in the field, was a person staring at something on their phone. The screen's glow giving them away. That's when I got a bad feeling. I turned the car around, ready to get off that road. As I did, 2 people jumped out from the field, right in front of us. The road was narrow, leaving no room to swerve without hitting them. So now, there were 2 people blocking my path, the luggage and parked car head, and the person with the phone in the field behind us. I didn't know what to do. Panicked, I spun the car back around, facing the luggage again, and made a split-second decision. I drove right over it. Thankfully, it was empty or light enough not to damage the car. We sped away unharmed and made it to my friend's house. The rest of the trip was great, and we had a good time, but I still get chills thinking about that night. It felt like a setup, like those people were waiting for someone to stop. To the strangers in the field, let's never meet again. In late fall of 2010, my dad, mom, sister, uncle, and I decided to hike to the Goat Canyon Trestle, a massive wooden bridge-like structure built in the early 1900s for a now-abandoned railroad. Located deep in the desert of San Diego County, Southern California, near the Mexico border, is one of the tallest freestanding wooden structures in the world. Back then, there was little information online about how to reach it, and my uncle, who was obsessed with remote, abandoned sites, had to dig deep to plan the route. There was no established trail, and you had to forge your own path across rocky desert hills. We chose Thanksgiving weekend for the hike, when my sister and I were home from college, and the cooler temperatures made it feasible. We parked in a barren, middle-of-nowhere spot surrounded by desert. My uncle said we'd need to climb the hills ahead, then descend through a canyon that the trestle spanned. The hike started fine, but the lack of a trail made it tough. The terrain was rocky, with loose slate and sand that sent you slipping. Within hours, I'd fallen multiple times, scraping my knees and hands. Scrambling over rocks to reach the hills took way longer and more energy than we expected. We started around 9 or 10 a.m., but by the time we hit the hilltops, it was mid-afternoon. We still had to descend the canyon to the trestle and make it back before sunset, around 5 p.m. My parents worried we wouldn't have enough daylight to reach the trestle and return. They suggested turning back, but my uncle was determined to at least see it from the canyon's edge. He offered to go alone while we headed back. Being the young, invincible-minded guy I was, I convinced my parents to let me go with him. My uncle and I were faster hikers, and we figured we could make it to the trestle and back in time. We split up, and my uncle and I pressed on toward the canyon. Here's some context about the area. The trestle is close to the Mexico border, along abandoned tracks running between Yuma, Arizona, and San Diego, roughly parallel to the border. Back then, this was a known route for illegal immigrants crossing into the U.S. My uncle had read stories about people hiding in the abandoned train tunnels to avoid border patrol during the day, then walking the tracks at night. The area was also a hot spot for coyotes and mules, not the animals, but people smuggling immigrants or drugs. Border patrol was active, too. As we continued through the hills, things got strange. We came across a small grove of fan palms, short, stocky trees with thick fronds covering the trunk, about 8 to 10 feet tall. The grove felt eerie, like something was watching us from behind the fronds. I was relieved when we moved past it. Eventually, we found a canyon we thought led to the trestle. It was rugged, with loose rocks making the descent a nightmare. We slipped and slid the whole way down. About halfway, the sun began to set, casting the canyon in shadows. An eerie quiet settled in and it started getting cold. That's when we both started seeing things. We swore we saw my mom at the top of the canyon, looking down at us. My uncle joked that she'd never let me go alone and must have followed us. We kept going, but when we looked back, no one was there. We figured she stepped behind a rock and called out to her, but got no response. I was a bit freaked out and told my uncle we should turn back, but he insisted we were close. He was right. Around the next bend, we saw the trestle ahead. It was impressive, but we were still a good way from the base, let alone climbing it, which was our original plan. My uncle, the adventurous nut, wanted to keep going, but I stumbled and badly sprained my ankle. I couldn't go further. He finally agreed to turn back, but said he'd go a bit farther alone to snap some photos. Then we'd head back together. So there I was, alone in the darkening canyon, nursing my ankle. I glanced up to see if my mom was visible again. Nothing at first, but then something large moved out of the corner of my eye, darting between rocks. A wave of dread hit me, like I was being watched from every shadow. It was unnaturally quiet. My uncle returned, and we started a slow climb back up the canyon. It was pitch black now, with just a sliver of sunset left. I was freaking out, knowing we'd be walking in total darkness. Near the top, my uncle stopped and pointed. There was my mom again, standing at the canyon's edge, staring down. We yelled, but she didn't move or respond. We kept going, thinking she couldn't hear us, but when we rounded the next bend, she was gone. I was losing it, and I'm not sure how I'd have handled it without my uncle there. We reached the top, completely alone in the dark desert hills. My uncle had a small headlamp, which we used to follow our faint path back. The darkness was oppressive, like I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. As we passed the fan palm grove again, I was terrified. Those trees felt like silent sentinels. I remember the uneasy feeling from earlier, like something was lurking in the fronds. As we walked through, a loud rustle came from one of the trees, too big for a rodent or reptile. My uncle swung the headlamp, but nothing was there. Seconds later, another rustle from behind. Again, nothing. Then I felt something shove me hard, away from the palm I was near. I crashed into the dirt, certain something had reached through the fronds and pushed me. I didn't hear any rustling, despite being so close. I yelled to my uncle that something had pushed me from inside the tree. He checked with the headlamp, peering into the fronds, but found nothing. We hurried out of the grove and kept moving through the hills. Every so often, I heard rustling behind or beside us, but with no light, I couldn't tell what it was. It felt like something was trailing just outside the headlamp's beam where we couldn't see it. Finally, we made it through the hills and started descending toward the car. In the distance, we saw a faint light approaching. Nervous about whether it was friend or foe, we cautiously moved toward it. Thankfully, it was a border patrol agent looking for us. He'd found my family waiting at the car, and my parents had told him we were still out there. He led us back, where my mom rushed to hug me and scold my uncle. We told her we'd seen her at the canyon's top, and asked why she didn't wait or respond. My stomach sank when she said she'd never gone farther after turning back with my dad and sister. They'd been at the car for hours. I don't know what or who we saw in that canyon, or what was in those fan palms, but we weren't alone that night. Maybe it was our minds playing tricks. But 14 years later, I still think about it. To whatever was out there, let's not meet again. This memory resurfaced recently, part of some healing I've been doing that's brought back buried moments like this one. A few years ago, I was living in a new city, still pretty fresh to be on my own. My housing plans fell apart at the last minute, so I had to scramble to find a place. You guessed it, random roommates. The year before, I'd had a random roommate who turned out to be amazing and became a great friend, so I figured this would be similar. It wasn't. But that's not the main point of the story. I was living in a big old house with 3 roommates. Ben, who I knew a bit from the previous year and was starting to become friends with, and Tom and Mike, who were new to me. The house was split by floors, with the top level separated by a locked door at the stairs, which is important. Ben and I lived upstairs, while Tom and Mike were downstairs. I've always been paranoid, and for good reason, so I'm strict about locking doors when I'm home, when I leave, even my bedroom door when I sleep. This happened in the first couple of days after moving in. We'd all hung out to get to know each other, but Tom and Mike hadn't fully moved in yet. Both had a lot of expensive stuff, like 5-figure electronics and gear. I was home alone, with Ben at work and Tom and Mike coming in and out, moving their things. I was supposed to be somewhere else that day, which they knew, but the plans got canceled last minute, so no one would have expected me to be home. I was in my bedroom, door locked, with both entrances to our upstairs section locked, watching something on my laptop. Suddenly, I heard a lot of noise from downstairs, doors opening, cabinets banging, furniture being moved. I assumed it was Tom or Mike until I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. My heart started racing. They had no reason to come upstairs, especially knowing Ben and I were supposed to be gone. The footsteps got closer, heading toward the locked door at the top of the stairs. I froze, sitting as still as I could. Then the doorknob started to jiggle. I could hear it clearly since my room was right by the entryway. I was in full panic mode now. I grabbed my phone and called 911. whispering that someone was in my house, trying not to give away that I was there. The house was near downtown, and cops arrived in minutes. But those were the longest minutes of my life. By the time they got there, whoever it was had fled. The downstairs was completely trashed, like something out of a movie. Surreal to see. They'd stolen over $20,000 worth of electronics. I think, though I don't recall the exact amount. Furniture was broken, plates smashed, even mattresses ripped apart. It turned out Tom and Mike had left the door unlocked while moving, which is how the thieves got in. That was the last time something like this happened before I moved out. The intruders were gone before the police arrived, but I spent months terrified they'd come back. Looking back, that became the least of my worries later on. I'm so glad I always lock my doors. Seeing how the downstairs looked, I don't know what they would have done to me if they'd gotten through that locked door. To whoever was on the other side, let's not meet again. A few years ago, my husband and I were at a gas station late at night. It was an odd spot where two roads met at a sharp angle, with the station tucked into corner. We pulled up to a pump with no working lights, making it hard to see from either road. We were in our soft-top Jeep Wrangler, with all the rear windows off. My husband got out to pump gas, and I stayed in the passenger seat, scrolling on my phone. That's when I heard it. "I'm not going to hurt you." The voice was wavery, coming from some distance behind me. I froze, instantly terrified. I turned to look through the open back, where the window should have been, and saw what looked like a homeless man a little ways off. He had wild gray hair, a faded beanie, and an oversized jacket with lots of pockets that hid his hands. The darkness hit me. Nobody could see us clearly, and I couldn't see what he was holding. A gut feeling screamed, "Run!" But we were just pumping gas. He was probably just a weird homeless guy, right? We lived in Key West, where we'd seen plenty of harmless folks like him. So I tried to calm down. I turned back to my phone, ignoring him, but I could still hear him. Shuffling feet, the rustle of his jacket. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said again. "I just need some help. Do you have any money? I'm not going to hurt you." His voice was closer now, almost at the Jeep. We'd only been there a couple of minutes, and the tank wasn't full yet. Without warning, my husband jumped into the driver's seat, hands shaking as he fumbled to start the engine. He threw the Jeep into drive, and we peeled out, leaving the gas nozzle dangling. He hadn't even hung it up. As we sped away, I looked back and saw the man standing there, motionless, next to the pump. My husband turned to me and said, "I just had the most horrible feeling. Something told me to run." I stared at him, horrified, and told him I felt the exact same thing. Tears welled up as I thanked him for trusting his instincts. We drove home, shaken, replaying the moment over and over. A day or two later, we watched a YouTube video by security analyst Scott Stewart about the Kenyon Mall shooting. He said that in every incident like that, some people report having a terrible feeling right before it happens. Some listen and leave, while others regret ignoring it. I burst into tears, knowing that feeling all too well. I'd had it and ignored it, but my husband hadn't. I was scream-crying, thanking him for listening to that sense of danger. Maybe the guy was harmless, just asking for money in a creepy way, and nothing would have happened. But I can't stop thinking about how the station's weird angles hid us from view, how dark it was, and how his hands were hidden in those pockets. I still get chills remembering him saying, "I'm not going to hurt you." The lesson I took away is simple. If you ever get that gut feeling that something bad is coming, get out. It might be a false alarm, maybe just anxiety, but it's better than living with the regret of not listening. To the man at the gas station, let's not meet again. Growing up in rural Alaska, I've experienced plenty of strange things. Herds of caribou, surreal landscapes, you name it. But the weirdest moments are the times I heard yelling or hollering from sources I couldn't see. I often traveled alone through the Brooks Range and up to the North Slope to hunt and trap. From a young age, I learned to hunt field dress animals, build survival shelters, and navigate at night using the constellations just like my ancestors. These long, grueling journeys sometimes brought me face to face with more than I was ready to handle. In the winter of 2017, I was checking a trap line along the left side of a valley, heading north. I had traps set every few miles and was moving along my trail on my snow machine when I spotted a figure among some diamond willows about a mile ahead. It looked like a person walking, which was odd for January, the coldest time of year. Who'd be out here just strolling? Then the figure vanished. I pulled out my binoculars and scanned the area, but saw nothing. I figured it was my imagination, or maybe someone with a snow machine who'd sped off. So I kept going. At the next trap, I stopped and turned off my machine. It was calm and surprisingly warm for January, around negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So I shed my parka to reset a spring trap. As I worked, I heard a low bellowing noise coming from up in the small valley. It started like a person shouting, but grew deeper, almost like a bear warning off a rival. But it was January. Nothing like that should be out. The most you'd see were wolves, wolverines, or caribou. Even moose head south this time of year. I tried to ignore it and focus on the trap, but the noise came again, louder and deeper. I remembered the figure I'd seen and wondered if it was connected, but I followed my elder's advice. Don't dwell on strange sounds. Just keep working. Then I felt eyes on me. I looked toward the valley where the sensation came from. Nothing. I checked with my binoculars. Still nothing. The bellowing started again, even louder. On instinct, I mimicked the sound back, letting out a deep yell. The noise stopped instantly, like it recognized my response. Everything went silent. Uneasy, I packed up fast and left. I haven't been back to that spot since. I pulled the trap line that winter and have no plans to return. Whatever was out there making those sounds, I don't want to know, to the source of that hollering. Let's not meet again. This happened just this summer, and I'm only now getting around to writing it down. I call myself an outdoorsman, having grown up in the sticks, spending much of my life wandering and enjoying the backcountry. Now, I'm older, settled in the suburbs with a wife, 2 boys, a house, a dog, and a desk job, the whole suburban package. I want my kids to have the opportunities that come with suburban life, but I also want them to grow up appreciating the outdoors. So, when my oldest son was old enough for his first solo father-son camping trip, I was thrilled. My wife and younger son stayed home for this midsummer adventure, meant to be a bonding experience for me and my 5-year-old. Since he's so young, I didn't want anything too extreme. We needed a spot that wasn't too deep in the Colorado Front Range, but still allowed for dispersed camping. I don't consider RV parks or established campgrounds real camping. You might as well stay in a motel watching TV. Real camping is a tent, a sleeping bag, and a fire. A dispersed camping area called Gordon Gulch, west of Boulder, caught my eye. I'd never been there before. It had no facilities, and it was remote enough that you couldn't see or hear other campers. Perfect. My son. And I had a blast that day. We set up camp, collected firewood, went for a hike, spotted a moose and a bobcat, tried fishing, and returned to our campsite as the sunlight faded to light a fire. We had a classic camping meal, hot dogs and marshmallows roasted over the flames. It was a great day, a core memory for both of us, and what I thought would be the perfect first camping trip for a preschooler. Or so I thought. After all that fun, we were exhausted and ready for bed. The sound of the summer breeze through the pines was better than any sleep aid. I don't even remember falling asleep, just a deep, dreamless slumber that only physical exertion brings. One thing about my son, he inherited a lot from me. Hair color, eye shape, disposition, and our unusually wide feet. But he got his mother's habit of sleep talking. It's not uncommon to hear him having full conversations in his sleep, especially when he's overtired. I was yanked out of that void of sleep, unsure what woke me. I sat up, gathered my bearings. The world seemed calm, just me and the breeze and the treetops. I couldn't pinpoint what had stirred me. Then my son's laughter cut through my groggy haze. A deep belly laugh, like he was having a fun dream. I smiled, gently rocked him to quiet him down, and settled back to sleep. But he burst out laughing again. I sighed, figuring he'd calm down soon. Then he laughed a third time, and this time it was echoed by something outside the tent. I held my breath, listening. It wasn't an echo. Something out there was laughing in sync with my son. My grogginess vanished as adrenaline kicked in. It couldn't be real. It had to be my imagination. I sat up, straining to hear. Nothing. After a minute, my muscles relaxed, and I started to lie back down, convincing myself I'd misheard. Then my son laughed again, and the laughter outside answered. I was now certain it wasn't an echo. As I tried to make sense of it, a voice from outside called my son's name. My blood ran cold. The voice was so familiar. It sounded like my younger son, who was miles away, safe at home with my wife. I heard twigs crunching beyond the tent's thin nylon walls, circling us. Unprompted, the voice called again, mimicking my toddler's tone, asking my son to come play. It sounded cold, hollow, lifeless. Adrenaline flooded my system, sweat beating on my face. I was terrified, but my primal instincts roared to life. Nothing was going to hurt my son. I was in full Papa Bear mode, ready to stop whatever this was. When you're camping miles from civilization, you don't take chances. Wild animals, wild people, you have to be prepared. I almost always bring a firearm when I camp. Pepper spray and bear bells are fine, but nothing gets a conscious threat's attention like the sound of a round chambering. I shouted into the night that I had a gun and was coming out, hoping my fear was masked by aggression. The only reply was the breeze and the trees. My son was still fast asleep, a heavy sleeper, like his mom. We joked he could sleep through a tornado. I stepped into the cool summer night, gun in one hand, flashlight in the other. The campsite looked normal. The fire was down to embers. Our fishing gear leaned against the truck, and the firewood was neatly stacked. Not wanting to stray far from my sleeping son, I sat by the tent entrance, waiting. Deep in the trees, I heard a branch snap, then another, closer. I stood and flashed my light toward the sound. Nothing. Then the voice called out from behind, "Daddy, Daddy," in my younger son's voice, crying for me. I swung the light and caught a pair of shimmering green eyes, only 2 feet off the ground, toddler height. I took a step closer, needing to see more. The eyes didn't blink, staying fixed on me. Getting closer didn't help. The thing seemed to absorb the light, swallowing it except for those glowing eyes. I couldn't make out its size, shape, or color. It laughed again, a hollow toddler's laugh, now with malice. The eyes shifted from green to amber, and I watched as they rose, like the thing was standing up from a crouch. They stopped nearly 10 feet off the ground. A deep growl erupted, vibrating in my gut. I couldn't see a mouth, but I heard teeth snapping. My son screamed from the tent, and the eyes flicked toward him. The only time they left me. I reacted on instinct, firing my gun into the air. The eyes vanished instantly. My ears rang, but I heard the growl turn to shrieks, followed by crashing branches and undergrowth as it fled deep into the trees. I stood there until the sounds faded, left with only the breeze of my son's quiet sobs. Twilight was creeping in, illuminating the forest. Shaking and exhausted, I sat in the dirt by the tent, trying to pull myself together. "Daddy, Daddy, where are you?" My son shouted, snapping me out of my daze. I went to him, scooped him up, and put him in the truck, locking the doors. I broke camp in record time, and we were on the road by sunrise. I have no idea what was in those woods. I do plan to camp there again, but without my family and with friends, to learn more about this thing. My son wasn't fazed. He thinks I chased off a bear, and maybe he's right. I hope so. He's eager for another camping trip, but I'm leaning toward an RV park or motel for the next family outing. To whatever was out there, let's not meet again.